the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain. Today we're doing a special episode to dive into the iPhone ecosystem. This really follows the launch of the iPhone 16e in recent weeks. And so I've spent some time looking at what are the differences, what does this mean for Apple, for those of us who like to use iPhones, whether it's in our family environments, within our organizations, and really what we've seen is a change in the landscape. So if we look back even a couple of months ago, there was the lower cost iPhone available, the iPhone SE third generation. So this was your approximately $900 iPhone model, but that has gone from the market largely. And so we have a bit of a change in landscape. Now, before we start, of course, a big thank you to our show partners, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. We really appreciate their support of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. So let's start off with a little bit of an overview of what we've got in the market. So no longer that more budget iPhone SE, and you could say in its place, but I think Apple have been working hard to send the message that this new iPhone 16e, whilst it is at a lower price point than the other iPhone 16s, is certainly not a direct replacement for the iPhone SE. It's coming in at a higher price point, and it has very, very many of the features of the iPhone 16. We'll delve into some of the things that are missing. You've got now the iPhone 16, the standard kind of option as well, and then the iPhone Pro. And in the 16 and the Pro, you've got the larger variants, the Plus and the Max. So, what does this mean for all of us who buy iPhones? Well, I think here there is a degree to which Apple phasing out the lowest cost iPhones from the market, you could argue this leaves them open to more people may be being tempted by Android offerings. And if we look at what Samsung, for instance, have in the market, they've got a number of handsets at any given time that less than half the price of the iPhone 16e. So, sub the $600 price points. And we see smartphones, coming down to even below $200. So this does set quite a clear delineation between Apple's offerings and what else is in the market, certainly in terms of their mainstream offerings. But worth noting that Apple do tend to often also make older models still available in the market. So you can still buy the iPhone 15 through Apple and its variants, and through varying sources, iPhone 14s and some cases iPhone 13 model. And if you look at those older models, they can come in at times pretty close in terms of prices to what the old iPhone SE was. The difference being when the iPhone SE launched, it had the same chip as what a standard iPhone was, but then it wouldn't get updated for a number of years. So how do I feel about this new iPhone 16e? Well, spent a bit of time with it. And, in many ways, it feels very, very similar to the iPhone 16, but you're coming in $400 less. So this is just under $1,200 compared to the iPhone 16 coming in at around $1,600. So there's a reasonable discount there. I guess you 25% lower in terms of its pricing. And when you compare, you look at, well, what's missing? Let's run through the things that really stood out to me. It has some wireless charging, but it doesn't have the MagSafe, which is the magnetic charging accessories that we've kind of got used to over the last few years. To me, that's not a big killer. So it's still compatible with wireless charging. The main place I use wireless charging is in the car. And so, yes, with another iPhone, it's going to charge faster, but that's not a big issue. Doesn't have what Apple call their dynamic island. You've instead got the notch at the top of the display. Again, I don't think that's a major. I see that their screen brightness is lower. Again, for most people, that's not going to be a big drama. One thing they are missing is their ultra wideband chip. And this is kind of curious because, again, most people probably won't notice. But one of the things with Apple's Find My capabilities, if you've got an AirTag on something, you've got AirPods and so on, the ultra wideband chip that's in all the other iPhone 16 variants will point you in the direction of where that thing is that you're looking for that has the AirTag on it, how many meters away you are, and so on. So you get this sort of precision guidance, and might point you to your sofa or wherever you've lost something, and that's pretty slick. But of course, with the Find My capabilities, whether it's with an AirTag or whatnot, in a lot of cases, those things can also emit a beeping sound. So you can audibly go and find them as well. A little bit of a variant on the Wi-Fi 6 versus 6E or 7, and you're down to a single camera, and so there are some limitations there. But otherwise, the iPhone 16e looks very, very similar to the standard iPhone. So yeah, I can see this one, really sort of filling in a bit of a gap there for people that actually want to be able to get the latest phone, but have been concerned in terms of budget wise. For organisations who have maybe used iPhone SE in the past as maybe something of a fleet phone for staff, this is going to push up their costs a little bit. But you are buying a better phone, particularly if the 16e gets refreshed on an annual basis with a 17e, or maybe we have to wait a couple of years and it's an 18e variant. We'll see how that actually plays out. But I can imagine this being something that Apple actually refreshes on an annual basis. The probably the most noticeable difference, other than those things I've mentioned, between the iPhone 16e and the 16, and also there's the Plus, which gives the slightly larger screen, going up from a 6.1 to a 6.7 inch screen. It comes down to the cameras, because you've got dual camera capability there, which is helpful in terms of giving you some better zoom options. Now, for me, the big step up on iPhone is the 16 Pro or the Pro Max. Now, they start at a $2,000 price point, and you add another $200 if you want the Pro Max, the larger screen. But look, for me, I really enjoy that the Pro and the Pro Max have this extra camera which has got a 5 times optical zoom, and so the amount of things that you can capture in really good quality compared to somebody that doesn't have a phone at this level, compared to the single camera or single lens in the iPhone 16e. And we know obviously there's others in the market that have got this sort of level of zoom as well, from the likes of Samsung and Oppo and so on the Android front. But for me, that's a really key feature. And in recent weeks, when my son's been playing sport, some of the videos that I've got and shared with other parents have been amazing because of that 5 times zoom. And then I look at ones that are sort of taken on another phone that doesn't have that sort of optical zoom, and they're pretty rubbish in comparison. And the ability also shoot at 120 frames per second. So cricket match and looking at somebody getting bowled out, being able to capture that and then sort of slow it down with slow-mo is really a big step up. So yeah, across the range, that's really the things that stick out for me. And yeah, I'm very much in that camp of wanting to have the best cameras possible. And yeah, look, if you're looking at the iPhones, to me, that's kind of your key differentiator. So if you're not needing to have the most flexibility with Zoom for your video, your 4K video, or for your photos, then you can bring the price points down quite significantly. So anyone that's up for a refresh on the iPhone, we will put up on the NZ Tech Podcast website a bit of a comparison table between the different models, the local New Zealand pricings and so on. Probably the other bit that I should mention around the iPhone 16 Pro Max is that one, and also the iPhone 16 Plus. Those have bigger batteries, which in part relates to the larger screens, and that uses more power. There is a performance difference, so the lowest cost in iPhone in terms of the 16e, doesn't have quite the same performance of the other ones. But in my experience of just using sort of general day-to-day apps, that wasn't noticeable. But technically, if you look across the range, that lowest cost iPhone has a 4-core processor there versus those kind of basically step up to 5 and 6-core as you go into the higher models. So quite pleasing in some ways that Apple have introduced this less pricey variant that still has Face ID and most of the other features of the 16, but I'm sure there will be some that are a little bit disappointed that it's not a new iPhone SE coming in at that sort of sub $1,000 price point. But if that's kind of where the budget lies, and I know this is certainly a challenge, and I know in my own family, my son wanted an iPhone specifically, and so how you work through getting these pretty expensive gadgets for family members. I guess there's some different approaches to that. Interestingly, looking online, there are even refurbished iPhones available in the market and so on as well. But I would largely recommend get the newest iPhone you can if you're buying an iPhone, so you get a good lifespan for it. And typically we've seen iPhones running for over 5 or 6 years in terms of updates if you buy the latest model, which comes with the latest chip. If you're buying an older model or secondhand, then you might not get too many years out of it before it's no longer able to take updates, and that can become a security issue as well as a functionality challenge. Couple of other things worth mentioning. I've been largely on the 16 Pro Max. I've got the terabyte model, and I've got roughly half filled up with a lot of videos and photos and other content. To migrate that from one iPhone to another, that was around a 2-hour process to do it sort of phone to phone. You can also do it via the cloud. And those processes of migrating from one phone to another have got a lot better over the years. So, pretty consistent. I remember a few years ago trying to do that, and I had a phone that, 2 weeks later said it was still migrating. There was something it must have got stuck on, but it wasn't clear what the issue was. I think I ended up having to wipe it just to kind of get rid of that and start again. But also the move from Android to iPhone and iPhone to Android, the tools there have improved, and Samsung do a pretty good job on the front for those that are moving away from the iPhone world. It's no longer maybe as difficult as it once was. So, because I've often sort of run multiple phones and so on, I have been through those sort of processes of trying to move SMS messages and whatnot from one ecosystem to another. It's not always absolutely perfect, but it's certainly not impossible in most cases to kind of get most things from one ecosystem to another. But of course, there are lots of things that you will tend to build into how you work, whether that's the sort of Google ecosystem on Android, or whether that's sort of the varying parts of the Apple ecosystem with their podcasts and their music and Apple TV and so on. And I guess both the Android and the Apple ecosystems work pretty well these days, but I guess if you're weighing up sort of what to do next, for most people, once you're in an ecosystem, you're probably largely going to stay there. And I think this is probably part of the reason why Apple have dropped this kind of budget iPhone and the iPhone SE, and that for not a massive step up in terms of cost, folks are able to stay with iPhone and probably less likely to move away would be my guess. But really interested in hearing from listeners that have maybe moved from one ecosystem to the other. Love to hear your stories and understand why you've made a move in one direction or another. I think there's often compelling reasons, but yeah, certainly. I guess if we look at what I've been mostly using lately, it's been more leaning in the iPhone direction than the Android or the Samsung direction. Of course, we do have other brands other than Samsung in the Android ecosystem in New Zealand, but it tends to be Samsung who have got the broadest range and the best support in terms of security and updates there. Well, that's my overview. That's my update after time across all the current iPhones, and hope you find that helpful in your decision making. If you're wondering where to go next, what to do on the phone front, be it planning a fleet of phones within your organization or for personal usage. Key thing to always think about with these things is how you're going to keep these devices and the data that's in them safe and secure. And if you're disposing of a device, make sure you're wiping that before you give it away and hand it on to a family member. Yeah, really important to think through those sort of data privacy and cybersecurity considerations as well. If you duck across to the nztechpodcast.com website, you will see a bit more information in terms of all the New Zealand prices on the current models and some of the technical information for those that are interested. All right, well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us on this review on the latest iPhones. And of course, a big thank you to our show partners, to Gorilla Technology, HP, Spark, 2 Degrees, and 1NZ. Cheers.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.